There we are. Okay, well, welcome everyone. It's great to see you all. Welcome to Perfect Connections on whatever day this is, May 21st. Is this the 21st? Okay,
Yep.
Great. A question had been raised about funding in ECFE, so I wondered if we could open up today talking a little bit about that. If you could share just your knowledge about kind of how the program is funded and kind of where the money goes and all of that. If you'd feel comfortable. Anyone?
I can share what I know, which is that I believe ECFE is funded on a, I don't know if it would be correct to call it a per diem, but it's the population of the district's community age 5 and under times, or it might be under 5 or 5 and under, not sure, but that's in the statute. That's findable, and times a certain dollar amount. And that's what that dollar amount is, I think was the next step when I was poking around this, and I couldn't really find a for sure one. And so I went with an estimate, and I don't remember what it is, but I could dig out what I found at the time. So that's what I know about the funding. I think it comes through in July of every year. And in terms of accountability for how that's spent, that is really, really much more difficult, because I think, yeah, I'm not sure that's always totally transparent. So.
Well, I have a question right away. I'm more of a questions than answers person with this topic, but I was always under the impression as a parent in ECFE that it was super important that they got each birth certificate for each kid, because it was each child who was attending ECFE that helped determine the money, not just who was born in the district. Like that attendance impacted funding. Do you know anything about that?
I think that it's more along the lines of what Sarah was talking about, that we promote the census and you promote every child in your area to get on it, so that increases the funding. But that where you're hearing it, Becca, I believe as a parent you maybe heard it, and it was mostly in regards to getting everybody on the census. That's my understanding. And then everybody who attends, of course, plays a role in how many dollars, because of how much money is brought in through ECFE, I think. But that's maybe dated information. It might be different.
So Becca, when you were a participant, did they ask for birth certificates?
Oh yeah, we always had to have a birth certificate and a immunization record were the two forms. And we actually, as a parent advisory council for our site, we raised money to help people pay for birth certificates because they're not free, and that felt like a point of access issue. So, but it definitely seemed like it was tied to funding. And I don't know if it was tied to funding, like who gets how much money or where money gets distributed versus how much total. I don't know, but it very much seemed like, definitely in our birth to 5 class, you can bring your baby, but let's get that birth certificate in as soon as we can so that it gets counted.
We
so
require
weird.
that too. And my message that I had been getting, maybe wrongly, was that was more about like the school district of wanting them to get the kids into our Skyward system, and it has to have a birth certificate to get in there.
And see, we have never asked for birth certificates in my district ever. We asked for immunization forms, or my previous district. The only time we ask for birth certificates is at when they come for early childhood screening at age 3.
Yeah. In Maplewood, we require birth certificates as well.
Wow, interesting. So there you go.
We're with you, Ellen. We don't either.
We don't either in Inver Grove Heights.
So I just pasted in the chat the sentences I had crafted around this. And so it's, I think it's number of children under 5. This is when the research was fresh for me. times a dollar allocation per child. In 2019, closest I could find was $145.18 per child. That's the funding from the state to the districts for
But
ECFE.
that's for every child who's born in the district?
Who's in the census, right?
I think
Yeah,
who
that's
lives,
why census
Yeah, that's
numbers are so important.
they have to live in the district, because we have a lot of moms come down from the cities to give birth in Northfield. They're not counted in our census, so they have to
Mhm.
bid. So here's another question. When my newborn babies come to a class, they fill out the early education form. The EE at the early education MDE form. That's how they get into our system at Skyward. What? You guys, your families don't fill out the early education
You know, I
form?
don't teach the baby class, so maybe they do, and I just don't know about it.
Well, this is, our parents fill this out every session, every time.
I don't,
Never
I
heard
teach
of it.
babies and I don't know what that is.
So Ellen, I know that we have some paperwork that's done online upon registration online, and those things might be being done out there and that I don't even see it anymore and I don't know. So
Okay, I'm gonna go get a copy out of my Google Docs and send it to you, because it's the Department of Education's early education student form. And that's how we get our kids in our Skyward system. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go look for that.
So I'm
One thing
looking
that
at like,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I just wasn't trying to open what you've been posting here, Susan. So maybe that's what you were going to talk about.
Oh, well, yeah, I just went on to I had to get something else off of it today, but Mike Brown's Wikidot has all kinds of ECFE administrative information and that kind of thing. So I figured if there was any place that might post that, because they're trying to do a lot more for training and supporting ECFE coordinators, many of whom are kind of new to that job or to ECFE. Anyway, so if you have access to Wikidot, you might want to search there, but this is something that I found, but unfortunately, of course, it is so old. This is 2005, 2006. And I included the link, but then I also included the single sheet PDF. So it elaborates on this formula, at least it was back then. And it also has numbers, like for there, it's like birth to 4 for home visiting and a certain dollar amount. The other part is the money that comes in, and I don't know if this is relevant, but what I just in my own sort of indirect experience with ECFE listening across school districts is also then how the money gets distributed. And that seems to be of question and concern too. And kind of that concern of like holding on to the ECFE's money and sort of who has jurisdiction over that money and how it ends up getting spent and not always for ECFE. So that's kind of also where I've heard there's a bit of mystery. And welcome, Elizabeth Hodacek. It's wonderful to see you. We're talking about ECFE funding, where it comes from, where it goes, the mysteries therein. Yeah, so that's the other side of it, is the spending piece. So I don't know if that's.
And can anyone weigh in, and maybe we have on here some current or former directors who, but can anyone weigh in on like, how is that information discoverable of once it's kind of in-house to know how the money is being spent, allocated, whatever?
I'm the new coordinator, yay, right, this year. And so I'm learning a lot of things. And I think one of the things, maybe one of your questions too, is remember this year when COVID started or whatnot, they did an emergency whatever allocation where the districts could take funding from early childhood and put it into the general fund. So if that's where you're going with it, I mean, that's what we'd talked about that earlier in the year too. So that was something different that wasn't ever allowed before, and that has made I think a big impact in some districts, and luckily for my district, they chose not to do that. But in districts where they chose to do that, I think it made a big difference too. So I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah, Miss Sarah. Miss Sarah's raising her hand.
No,
so,
no, I really want you to finish.
Oh, so here when we get our funding, I mean, we have budget codes. That money is ours. It doesn't go anywhere. In early childhood, our ECFE is under community ed, not, and that's Big Lake, right? So we ours is under that community ed umbrella, and so that our community ed director and then I are the ones that look at that budget and the budget codes, and we both look at those things, and nothing can just be taken or used for another reason unless we okay it. But because of that emergency whatever allocation now, that gave power to school districts to override that and use it for whatever they wanted to, essentially. So anyway, yeah, that made it trickier.
So what I understood about that, actually, Sarah, the special dispensation due to COVID was that the only funds that could be redesignated were funds that were previously undesignated.
Oh, because have we had Mary Myers on here? Because they like took all of their, like took a bunch, like even things that weren't designated. So that was just an abuse.
Well, I think the statute said when it came down, and I can share that with you. I think if I could dig it out, that only undesignated funds, like so surplus, who's got surplus ECFE funds could be redesignated. And so they didn't have to get like stockpiled they didn't have to stay earmarked for just ECFE use if they were undesignated. And that if that was the case, then that had to run through the school board and be audited.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's what what I've talked to other coordinators about was, yes, it got ran through the school board, but it wasn't undesignated funds.
No.
That's too bad. Anyways, I don't know. I probably wasn't very, but here we're pretty careful with that. Like it is in-house where yeah. But I can see where, especially bigger districts and stuff, we're little.
And you are very involved. You show up at the table whenever you can. And that doesn't necessarily mean when it's necessarily invited, but whenever you can, you show up. And you promote early childhood, Sarah Fritsch. You're awesome. So sorry.
Yeah, they love me.
When I was at my other university in Maryland, we were a small academic department in a very large Research One land grant university. And we had a department head who was absolutely amazing. And when nobody was getting money for offices or for staffing or anything, like for some, like it was just like, how did we get that? And it'd be like, Sally got it. And our common phrase, and Sarah, I'm sure this relates to you too, is that our department was like a dachshund that thought it was a Great Dane.
Well, even those little dogs go, yip, 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 yip. Right? We will be heard.
Right.
I like that, Susan.
Well, we're really, really fortunate here because we got this year we had a lot of, I'm new, my community ed director's new, our supervisor of all of our childcare is new, and our community ed director like right away like hit the ground running when everything got shut down and applied for every grant he could find, like every, you know what I mean, to keep us. And I think that makes a huge difference when you have a director that's just fighting all the time for you. So 100%. I have
so I pasted the statute and it's section 8. And as I read it again, so fun reacquainting myself with all of this. It's a cooperative unit may transfer any funds not already assigned to or encumbered by staff salary and benefits or otherwise encumbered by federal law. So it looks like the transfer could have been, the reallocation could have been used justifiably for anything but taking away salary and benefits from staff. So not necessarily assigned to ECFE in general, but already assigned to staff salary and benefits. So those funds were supposed to have been protected, but other funds could have been reallocated. But again, there's still the requirement for the school board reporting and audit trail. So that's just this year.
So if you had teachers, so that basically gives you the loop where if you had teachers that they weren't under a contract, that they could say that those funds, right? Those were unallocated funds then.
That's true, Sarah.
Well, Sarah Hardy, thank you for all the work you did months and months ago for us to have more clarity today. Thank you for the hardship of all of that. I know it's not easy, but thank you.
I was deeply, deeply in the weeds on it, certain low points in perhaps November and December. But we got through it.
Well, it's having dividends in the future. So thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and you've taught us so much, Sarah. We're very lucky to have you.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Thanks for saying that. That feels good to hear. Thanks, Greta. Thanks, Sarah.
If any of you aren't familiar or couldn't join us before, Sarah advocated incredibly for her program, and I would say pushed her. I was going to say nudged, but I think push is the operable word here, and pushed her school district for answers and for attending to ECFE in this challenging year, and they did a whole slew of layoffs and did some kind of crazy things that should not have been not transparent. And so Sarah's letter and her painstaking research was a model for all of us on advocacy. So thank you again.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. And actually, I think I can share that the mediation has come to a settlement.
Oh.
That involves some very important, symbolically important concessions by the district and actual cost to the district. So this is our union representative, power to the people, who they filed a grievance and was able to get the district to concede that they were in error, and has there, I can share the details, but it's not anything that for the people whose livelihoods were relying on that year of salary and benefits, it doesn't come close to making up for that, but symbolically it's important, and it does involve a cash payout by the district to each of the 13 people affected. So I think it's hugely important symbolically because so it's like 4 things that they agreed upon. And one of them is that each of us will be credited for the year of service, even though we were laid off. So that's hugely important, right, for accrual. It means it's tremendous. It's been very quiet. We all just kind of got the email and this is what's happening. But yeah, it's symbolically important. So I'm not sure what my letter had, if anything, my letter had to do with that, my letter to the superintendent and the school board, because this was going on before and after that letter hit. And I haven't heard anything from anyone about my letter except one school board member who was a really surprising advocate, like of the ones I would have picked and guessed who would have contacted me, he was not. And so that was a whole interesting experience, but yes, so it's good for all of us that the mediation worked out the way that it did, because it is a really nice precedent for all of us. So Tom Connell, our union rep, and Education Minnesota, those folks are hugely to be congratulated and thanked for this, because it's important, I think.
it even has a chance to set a precedent, Sarah.
That's
for the
right.
future, right? And
Yes, it does.
that's amazing work. And I also want to say about the school board member, we never know who's in our corner. I mean, people can look
Right.
one way or act one way, and then
Mhm.
we just need to let them know about what's going on. And let,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Totally.
lovely, in a lovingly way, surprised at, right? I guess I don't
Yeah.
want to be, I don't want people to assume for me, right? And I guess
Right.
that should encourage us to continue to get the word out.
100%, Greta. And what it reminded me of is that, like, you cannot argue with ECFE. Like, everyone knows that it's awesome. And this school board member was an ECFE dad. And
See?
he's like, I love ECFE. It was a lifeline for me. And
Yeah.
it's like national parks. Like, even if you're not using them, you want to know they're there. Right. Like, and so even though he and I are going to disagree on lots of other stuff, he and I agreed that everyone can agree that ECFE is tremendously valuable. And so, yes, it should be like the easiest thing in the world to get support for and advocate for, right? Because it's just to me, it's clear as day. So
I was just reading a little bit of research that was talking about the concept that how we hold our identities and the variety of things that we are, in the concept of, like, someone is a bank teller. Maybe some of you have been hearing podcasts that are talking about this too. And somebody is an activist, and how we identify ourselves as both and, but we're not always seen in each circle as and we might be seen as only, and what that does, and how we our perceptions, again, right? We've been talking about perceptions a lot this year.
totally.
So yeah, really important work that's being done. So yay.
Yay.
Oh, wait. I have to call on myself, Susan. So my question is, will this get media attention? Do you know if there are any constraints on media? Because not only, I think it's just an extra, even if it's a letter to the editor that recognizes the wisdom of the school board to recognize this or whatever, right? Is that it's sometimes those things can be a way of smoothing relationships that are a little tenuous. But most of all, it can be incredible promotion for ECFE and for ECFE's value. And I think that just as we're all talking here, and I too relate ECFE like parks and also like public libraries, because it is also a public, good. And it's those intangibles of something that is so meaningful in the fabric of your life and that you attend on a regular basis, but it's very hard to quantify the meaning and, anyway. So, but I'm also thinking about the validation. So just think too of all of the families who have been long time ECFE families in Edina. And I mean, what happened in Edina has sent shockwaves to a lot of people that I've talked to who are going, it happened in Edina, and so if you have an institution that is really important to you, right? And then there's this superpower that does something really nasty to that can start to shake your foundation of belief, right? And so I think if there is any kind of a public indication of what happened, it too will have, as we're talking about the multiple impacts of this, it too will have a very validating impact for the generations of families who know this and will go, yeah, it is important. Somebody stuck up for it because I can't do that, but it really is of value. So
even Susan, I'm feeling that at the moment. I've used Edina in my expression of concern all year since Sarah, you first said it. I have been expressing it as a concern, and I am so excited. I've got goosebumps all over. It's like, yes, this is awesome. Sarah, Susan, you said it all, but I just wanted to say yes, because that's energy. That's an energy that we can use now in going back to all the people I talked to and say,
Yeah.
guess what? Guess what?
So I'm dying to share the actual details with you, but I'm reading this again from Tom and our union rep. And he says, funny thing, he'll send us a copy of the signed agreement for our records when he has it. But as he was drafting this email, I noticed an important date in the agreement was incorrect. So they need to re-sign the document. So of course, I'm conservative. I want it to be signed officially and done before I share out, or before it gets shared out. And also, I don't know if there is a plan already for sharing it out, like to the media or whatever, Susan. But I think I'm glad we had this good talk, because I hadn't thought about that. I'm still kind of internal about it, and I think that this call has helped me appreciate how helpful it would be and important it is to make sure that it gets communicated out however possible. So just give me like another week, and hopefully that's all it'll take. It feels like I always think it's going to take a week. It takes 6. And then I think that would be, I can provide you hopefully with something that you could share around in your districts. And maybe I'll talk to Tom about what, if any, plan he has for enlisting the media to get the word out more generally to the state. So good talk. I'm going to make a note.
Sarah, before we close this out, do we have, I know you were wonderful to share your letter. Do we have a copy of the letter in our chat archives? Had you shared it in chat? And then, so
I think we
Greta's shaking her head.
did.
Yeah.
I think we did. Eugene, do you remember? I think we had her letter.
It would have been in the
No.
fall.
No, we don't have it in our file. We only have through email. So Susan sent us through email.
Well, I have it. It was February. It was in February, actually, Susan. Yeah, it feels like forever ago, but it was only February. So let me see. Yeah, so I have to make sure I send out the right version. But yes, I could provide it if it's not there. But if you, because Susan, you emailed it out, didn't you?
I thought so.
Yeah. Susan emailed it to everyone.
Yeah, we got a copy of it from
Good.
you,
Yeah.
Susan.
Yeah.
And you know what, Susan, I can, Sarah, I can put it in our file if Sarah is permitted. I can put it in our. I have this copy.
You have my permission. Yes, and Lorraine, I'm noticing your comment. As I'm sitting here thinking about that, I'm thinking you're probably right. Like they may have actually even talked with that may have even been negotiated with the district, because it's probably not awesome for the Hornet land.
Right. It's not going to be awesome for the district, but it's so important for teachers. It's teachers statewide. Anytime that the union can really go to bat for you, because there's still, like, I've been a union rep for a number of years, and there are still districts that don't have ECFE as a part of the teachers union. There are still districts that are struggling even with new teachers, K-12 getting on board, because they are not thinking union membership is important. And so these are the kinds of things where it benefits in so many ways to have it be public.
Yep. Thanks. Let's circle back to this for sure.
Sarah, I have a question for you.
Yuji?
Yeah. So I have a question. So God, I'm so happy for you. I feel, oh my God. So the question is, will ECFE classes resume in the district?
Yeah, so they've always had a few. They've had a program this year, and the catalog for the fall is enrolling. And there are some classes, and I have no idea how enrollment is going, or it's not the program. It's not the program it was.
Oh, so how about your classes? How about?
Well, I am noodling a bunch of different directions I could go right now for the fall, so I'm not exactly sure. I think I have a plan, but I'm not ready to share.
Oh,
Thanks for asking.
we'll wait for your good news later.
Oh God,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Great, thanks. Anything else? Oh, February chat resources. Yeah, we're on it. We'll get, and ignore my chat. Let me, can I delete it, chat? No, I can't. Okay. So use uses the right link to resources from our meetings. And our team of 3, the Perfect Connections resource team is on it. We will make sure a copy of Sarah's letter is in there. Thanks. Anything else on ECFE funding, distribution, anything like that? You feel good? Not feel good, but I mean, we've covered this topic. Because I just want to do another shout out to my friends from St. Paul. Welcome back to Perfect Connections. It's great to see you. How have things been going in St. Paul?
Things are going. Can't believe we're getting to the end, right?
You know, I teach from 9:30 to 11:30 on Thursday morning, right? So you've got that block and you're done versus spreading that out, you know, during the day. So, but I would guess that a lot of programs will be in a similar situation coming. Yeah. Good. Thank you both. Just, again, lovely to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for asking.
So what else is going on? Anything else that you'd like to bring to the group? Any joys, concerns, roses, thorns? It's so interesting as I like roll out, you know, like it's just like, oh, joys and concerns. In my program, we call it, you know. So
I just have a quick question to throw to the group. We had a new thing come up that we haven't had happen before in our group this week, and we are in person. And so mom and dad had come with the 2 girls a couple times to class this spring. Mom stayed home with one daughter yesterday, and dad came with the other child. At parent-child time, dad didn't come into the parent room. I thought he was in the early childhood room. The early childhood teacher thought dad was in the parent room, and dad wasn't in the parent room. Dad was in the hallway. And we've not had this happen before. And I'm kind of like, well, you know, I want to be sensitive because I'm guessing he was obviously uncomfortable about being in this room with these women. He's very, very quiet. But I also want him to know, like, that really is not an option. Thoughts? And of course, there's only 1 week left.
We've had that happen before, and it's just a conversation that you have to have and tell him how the program works, and that, you know, he has to join in the parent room. He doesn't have to talk. He doesn't, you know, have to participate. I mean, it's happened a variety of times. I find sometimes wives sign their husbands up for things and they don't really know that that's part of it sometimes, or what it really looks like. So it's not a super comfortable conversation, but I think it's more, you have to be direct, you know. Right, with 1 week left, do you even need to address it? I don't know.
Yeah, I figure that, you know, first of all, I'll see if he comes next week. And then if he does, then as we're separating, I'll make sure that he knows what his choices are, just in like that last week kind of can't happen again. So, but I just wondered, because I've never had that happen before.
That's happened many different times throughout the years I've taught. And I think it depends upon your sort of the approach that everyone takes and what you're comfortable with. But I know that It's about that building relationships. And I think that, I think what I've learned has really worked well is just to connect individually with the parent and affirm their presence and their, the ability for them to be involved as much as possible. And eventually I've had parents come into the parenting room eventually, and very introverted parents and, and I also think it may be, but also talking about expectations, because whatever your expectations are, but just describing the program and what they can benefit and so on. But I feel like I come from the place of, parents, they're there and, be here how you need to be here, right? There's definitely guidelines we have, but so I think it's just an individual too. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that, but I feel like that building relationships and just connecting individually, eventually I've had parents come and be really involved and be, like really strong advocates for the program, where they started out sort of hanging in the hall a little bit. And, so that's my thoughts.
Well, that kind of happened to me last night. We have a Thursday night class, and I have a dad who he's a state trooper, has never talked ever, but he always comes with mom. And last night he came without mom. And I've never been able to get him to talk. I'll ask questions about their daughter. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like, man, a few words, right? So last night when he came in, I asked him a little bit like about the structure of the state troopers, So we had this little, 3-minute conversation. Wouldn't you know it? At parent discussion time, he asked a question. He shared ideas with another parent. I've got, again, second to last class, but that was the first time I've been able to like really have a conversation with him. And it's like, he finally felt like, oh, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm here, and I'm going to talk. And you could tell when he was sharing or asking the question, he wasn't super comfortable about it, but mom wasn't there. And I just can't figure out, like, was he just following her lead? She's also never asked a question or talked. So anyway, just kind of going along that, just kind of Elizabeth basically saying, duplicating what you said, that connection piece is hugely important.
Well, thanks for those reminders. I think that, my own humanness and frailty is like, oh my gosh, he doesn't like us. I said something to offend him. I scared him, because he is so quiet, and I've gotten the same kind of like one word response. But that reminder, like, okay, but I have that gut level, like I love and care about these families, and I'll just keep sending that out there and know when he's ready. Because they were at an event we had last night. I mean, he was, and his wife and the other child came. So like they came again. And I tried to start a conversation and said something like, oh, you're the gold star dad today. You came to school twice. And he just smiled. No words.
Lorraine, this spring I had a dad who joined, whose mom has always come, but dad started joining this spring. And he was falling asleep in my class every single session. I'm like, well, boring am I, right? You do that little, oh my goodness, right? And about 5 weeks back, about halfway through the semester, he came up to me afterwards, he goes, I get off of work at 5:30 a.m. And then I come here, I'm like, okay, that feels a lot different, right? It's really, without that relationship, we make assumptions. We're just human. We make assumptions. And so then he like told me this. And then after that, he stayed awake in class and he actually participated in the conversation too. I'm like, oh, okay. So it kind of goes both ways. We both are a little more known and we both understand each other a little better. I'm sure you all have stories like that. I even had a dad who honestly couldn't stay awake. And he fell asleep and snored in class. Yeah, that was lovely. But he came, we got the kids there. So that was a medical issue that he had. So anyway, yeah, stories to tell, right?
On that note, I want to add that one of the parents in particular who didn't come very often and then came, when mom wasn't there a few times, and eventually, and they were in the program for a few years, and eventually he came to the parent room, he signed up for a class, a daytime class. And in the classroom, in the parent ed room, he would bring along, he would lay down and do sit-ups and things, and he would do like yoga. And then he brought in these exercise things he'd put on the doorknob. We had a doorknob for the little restroom in there. And I've always been that way. People be there how you need to be there. I mean, I've had other parents, we just go down a stretch and do some yoga on the floor. And I feel like, when I've shared that with other parents, educators, they're like, whoa, what? Like they hadn't seen that before, but anytime we did small group or pair share or whatever, he joined right up with the table and go, so or we'd speak from wherever he was in the room. So anyway.
I have a joy to share from today that's kind of along similar lines. Today was my last class of the year. And I realized it was my first time ever having a last class, because I started teaching last year and really things just kind of petered out. And before that I was student teaching, and that's not the same. And so it kind of drained me this week having all my last classes. I really like my Friday class, so it's kind of a high note to end on, which is wonderful. And there was a link that I had sent out a couple weeks ago for whatever my boss is asking people to figure out, to fill out in terms of like a course evaluation form that I had no say in, and I don't see the answers to any of that. And so I had made a small course evaluation form for myself that I passed out to all my classes at the end of the year, and along with a topic list. And I was, they know I'm a new teacher, and it's just like, okay, what was your favorite topic? What was most helpful? What would be great to leave off the list for next year? That kind of thing. And I have one dad in my Friday class who I sometimes can't quite read. He's got a little bit of a sarcastic sense of humor. And he refused to fill it out. So like everybody else is filling out their evaluation forms. And I made it clear. I was like, this is not ideal. This is not super anonymous, because I'm just giving this to you and then you're going to leave them in the classroom. And so there's only 7 of you here, but just whatever you think would be helpful for me to know for next year, right? It's just, that's all it's for. My boss won't see it. This is just for me. And he wouldn't fill it out. And finally he looked around and he's like, do I have to fill this out? And I said, no, or if there's just, 1 or 2 things that you would like to note, you could do that. And I went straight to those assumptions of like, he doesn't like me, he doesn't want to see, and it ended up being the exact opposite. He was just like, Victoria is my youngest kid. I've been doing ECFE forever, and you're hands down the best teacher I've ever had. And I almost started to cry. He's like, I don't need to write it down, do I? It's like, this was all great. I learned so much. Like, and it was just like really affirming. But, I'm used to moms who want to write everything down. And he was just like, I don't want to fill this out. But yeah, that emotional place you go to of just assuming the worst, when that's not necessarily where parents are coming from. So, and
Now, Becca, make sure you send him.
Brought me flowers.
Oh.
So it was a really great last day.
So Becca, if he's leaving ECFE now, this is the time to give him the ECFE exit survey. This is where you hit him in the feelings. Like if this is his last kid and he's done, say, I do have one more survey to give you since this is your last ECFE, right? Let him tell his story.
But he was like very willing to verbally talk about something and just did not want to write anything down. And I'm still not sure exactly why.
Send him a link to the Flipgrid to make a video.
Or even just ask him if you can share that and use his name.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that next year he'll do the parent-child preschool ECFE, because his daughter's only 3, so she could still do one more year. Yeah, he was happy.
Well, and as it's useful, as if it is, this year too has been a crazy year with teaching through Zoom. And I was just triggered by Becca's wonderful story when she said about assumptions and how your assumption goes a certain place. So my own assumption has been that we get through the classes and and usually students won't do an evaluation. I mean, they just don't if it's online and that sort of thing. And I always have like a 3-question thing at the end about, what inspired you. So sort of that, was there a reading or an activity or something, and what will they take with them? So was there a skill or an inspiration or, a perspective or something? And then if there's anything else. And so I was sort of under the assumption that because these poor undergraduates are so overextended and zoomed out and everything, that I'd be lucky if I got anything. And so this is not making the assumptions about video, because I was also knocked out by the student responses to the about the class and about sort of my presence in the class, but just how meaningful it was to them. And it was just like, so the reason I'm mentioning this is I know a lot of you have been reaching parents and families through video conferencing. And if you've gotten the black screen with just their names, or especially the lack of participation, because people don't feel all that comfortable talking or whatever, that don't assume that you haven't made a difference, or that they haven't been listening, or that it hasn't been meaningful because it hasn't been face-to-face. We could all argue, sure, it would be more meaningful when we get back in a classroom together, but at least based on my experiences and I think the secret ingredient is us, right? Is us as instructors, as people who listen, people who care, people who are compassionate, people who bend over backwards to be there and be present for our students, to accommodate and to adapt. And, and so again, I can't, I feel like this is my last class, and kind of the words I always leave with my students, and this isn't our last class, but is, is that how really wonderful all of you are. And I have to believe that I just don't want you at all discouraged, like I was making these false assumptions about video conferencing and my students, is that what I heard from my students is, because I continue to teach like I teach, that's what worked for them, right? And so regardless of the platform and the format, if they could do it, now there's the equity issue, and if they could even access the internet, and that's a whole separate thing. But just, I think who we are as teachers coming through is so incredibly meaningful for the parents, for the families, that even if we don't see it in their sort of video response or participation or whatever, as they're trying to accommodate to a screen, that just believe, hold on to the belief that it made a huge, huge difference, because I know it did. Well, we're past 1. So any final words? Let's do a group hug. Get your arms out. We'll do a big, oh, can't you feel it? Oh, it feels so good. Oh, you guys are the best.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody.
Happy
Right,
weekend,
have a
everybody.
great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.